Awesome. All right. Welcome to Planning Commission. Um, Jill is not going to be with us today. My computer is not starting, so I don't
Neither
have the
Megan.
agenda. Huh?
No Megan too.
And no Megan. Okay, great. If somebody else could pull the agenda up. My computer is not cooperating with me at the moment. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Any public comment?
No members of the public in the room.
All right. Minutes. March 5th. Any comments or edits? Very good.
I'll move we adopt the minutes as written.
I will second that.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right. Any
Aye.
opposed? Abstentions? Wasn't here.
But I hadn't checked, by the way, I read them earlier in the week. I didn't check today if anybody made changes when I said that.
I mean, I read them earlier. Don't see any changes, but
I didn't even.
I had no suggestions when I read them, so great.
okay. All right. So task forces, all the rage right now. our whole agenda. Do we want to start? Does staff want to start, or do you want to start with EPA?
Yeah, let me give you a quick intro of what I think would be useful tonight. And I've got to run over to the select board at 7:15. I've got to run back and tag out with Melinda, and then I got to run back over later. Talking about sewer allocation and the official map and form-based code map amendment tonight with the select board. Tonight's their public hearing on that and their informal meeting on attachment A. So a couple things to go over. Chapin, you had asked when you emailed us earlier about the engagement report and the summary of all the public input. Staff is churning away on that. Right now, North Star has completed their part of it, and we're taking the report over the goal line, turning it into something that we're going to be proud to share with everybody. But we do plan on being able to present that to you at your next meeting, April 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
So that is coming. The other thing about task forces is we have an intern from UVM. Her name is Lorna. She's been given access to documents to start pulling background information from the table in, as well as information about what was said or done under the past town plan. So you may find some things plugged in there just to keep us going on that. And I thought tonight, rather than break up into groups, it would be good for us to get the various task force drafts up on the screen and have each task force just talk a little bit about what they've been looking at, where they're at. I think it's a good time to spot any early overlap or overlap can be a good thing. I'm trying to find a good word for overlap too. And some of the different angles that we're looking at various issues because of the ways we broke up the topics. And this meeting does not have to go till 9 o'clock in order to do that. But we thought we could do that, and then we'll use the bulk of the next meeting to present the engagement report, talk about those results, and then go back into task force work. So
sounds good.
I
wanted to just say, I just wanted to check in with other people too. I am less good. I will fully admit this at Freeform coming up with ideas, and I'm really looking forward to that report to help me. I did go through some of the compiled Excel sheet. I know Chapin had sort of talked about that being helpful, and it was helpful to just sort of look at that and remember and the roundtable pieces. But I definitely am in a place where I'm feeling a little stalled out and waiting for that report, but I wanted to see if other folks felt that way, or if people want, like, what amount of time or other input would be helpful for people in your task forces. I kind of have my, for some reason, hope set on that report as something that will inspire me, but I didn't want to Let me see if there's other things that could be helpful, or if people feel totally able. Go ahead, Chapin.
I'll speak to that, which the reason I was asking about that report is because I was stalling too on, I dive into the detail, and then I've made these sort of lists of things I think we should make sure to cover, but I don't feel as though I'm able to weight them because there's some that are obvious, like the number of people that said we need better and safer pedestrian infrastructure. That's there's some clear winners, and that people liking the trails and they like the library and they like this and that. But on the finer points, I really need some help, and part of it is my own emotional difficulty, as you say, getting from the detail to the general. And part of it is the technology has been hard for me working with the spreadsheet. And I was really wanting to make sure we included everything, including the postcards from the future. So that's why I was asking for that, for the same reason that you're saying, which I feel a little stalled out. I do have a couple of new ideas, and there's one I'm anxious to put before the group when we get a chance. But that just comes from me thinking about the future, not from the data. I need help basically filtering it to clump it.
Yeah. Anyone else in the room? Any other pieces that would be helpful?
Not so much helpful, just as kind of a fall on the sword sort of point, like you just made, is I honestly haven't had time to read through in any detail the other group's material. I think our stuff is coming along nicely. I mean, I'm happy with what we have. I like it cleaner than it is, just because that's the way my brain works. I feel like our document is about as legible as the Rosetta Stone right now, but it's got great content. We've gotten some great stuff in there, right? But it's just like, I don't want anybody to really see this. Because it's kind of a sign of mental illness, I'm afraid.
Fair enough. Okay. Anyone else?
I would say the first week we do it offline. I think we probably have to do more checking stuff offline. That's the only way we're going to progress. Because if you leave it to us, I mean, most of us have a lot of other different things, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So my suggestion will be to, at least at the minimum, once a week, we do separating checking. Right. On top of this, I think this is doing all of us together. I think it's better. I don't think we should break out. We are all together here, and we should do our breakout at the outside of this meeting. That will help us a lot more progress than what we are.
Anyway,
Yeah, I agree. I think more check-ins would just keep it top of mind and
moving. Yeah.
Yeah, we agree on the more check-ins, and it's been a bit of a tumultuous month with Simon leaving and the roles and responsibilities with this outreach project have shifted towards us. So we've been, working on that report, and I think we will be able to get it to you by April 2nd. I do have the draft to share. So I'm gonna share the economies and jobs section. And maybe this will kind of help inspire some of our conversation tonight, and you can see where the formatting is headed. So the image on the left, that page is going to be a collage of photos. So each event will be featured with one of the topic areas. What people value about Williston's economy, local businesses, convenience, and jobs. The challenges are housing, development, and transportation.
Just that is like so helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not making this up.
The town's priorities, balanced business development, improving transportation, affordable housing. The number one priority, economic diversity, housing, transportation. So each of these sections will highlight the top three, and then the section below is everything else that was said, including the other. And then we go into the survey questions. So people would like to see more unique small businesses and shops and tap corners, gathering space, cafes. Similarly, in the village, those same three things, just in a different order. I do note that when we analyzed the survey results, there was an other where people could specify. So looking at the other with the village, 6% of the respondents said nothing. They like the village as is. And same for Tap Corners when people said 2% of the respondents said nothing. They felt like Tap Corners was built out. And then the challenge is why people don't live and work here.
I like that. That was 3 housing thing. I mean, I don't like it. Interesting. There are 3 housing things all around there.
Emily, would you be able to make that full width of the screen, even though it might then not be full height of the page?
Oh, yeah. I think I should.
I'm on a fairly small old iPad and I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing, but hard to see it.
So when I do the side-by-side mode, I can't zoom in. If I go back to vertical, I can zoom in. On your iPad, do you have the green toolbar at the top or bottom of your screen?
It's at the top.
You might be able to click that toolbar and choose to zoom in more on the screen share on your page as well.
Well, I mean, again, we don't need to go through all the details, but this is great. This is exactly what I was, the type of thing that I was hoping we're gonna get, and that, so I'm sure it's a lot of work. I know there's been other times when we have contracted work out and you have gotten things and maybe changed the final product, and so I just appreciate the work that you are doing behind the scenes.
And Andrew did a really amazing job on all these open-ended questions. It's like, okay, we have, what do you like about Williston? We have 92 responses. That probably was thousands of words. So Andrew looked at what are the themes, and then was the comment positive, negative, or mixed. And I'm going to work on this formatting a little bit. This was Excel. I'm bringing it into more of this graphical format. But like what people like, convenient location, working from home, community, commute.
Yeah, that the convenience shows up a lot.
Yeah. That was something that I noticed just like looking at the Excel document. Get everything I want, I can,
Yeah.
I think another like blocker in terms of like filling out the spreadsheet that I felt, or in like the document that I felt like I ran into, one, like I agree with the time and the check-in, like I think that would help keep it top of mind, because it's like, oh, well, I can squeeze in like an hour here or whatever, but it's not like I feel like our doc like really needs some more love. But the other thing is like the survey results and everything, it's so much information, it's really helpful, but translating it kind of in what we were briefly talking about before we started, like they should put more of this here, or they should do that. And it's like, what are the things that we actually have the ability to control, and what are the things that we don't, where it's like people want to see a lot more of like smaller local businesses, like what lever, like I guess I'm still like, I don't know what levers we have to pull that can make that happen, if that's our vision for the village, or for, like
totally. I hear what you're saying. Like you're hearing the input and you're like, what is the lever or tool that I have to actually effectuate that in the town plan, and then also eventually in reality, right? Like what does that look like?
It's like we don't want to put a bunch of stuff in there that's not actionable. So
yeah, so that come up in our group discussion. We're saying though, like make it more easier and less bureaucratic red tape for that kind of business to set it up. Those are the things that I think probably we have some control over it. Of course, we cannot give them money to set it up, but we can make them hassle free to set up such thing, right? Or it's in a way kind of like a small chamber of commerce kind of stuff, right? To make them like, or like some kind of pamphlet, whatever, to say you do this and this and you good to go kind of things. So those are the things that we could do, right? If we really want to
move the way. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and we can also put in, I mean, I think there's the balance too in the town plan of reflecting what people want, and then doing those pieces where we're saying like, what are the activities toward that? And I think a couple meetings ago, or I don't remember when Chapin and I were talking about this, but Chapin and I were talking about that and the balance, but not because I'm the one who like wants, like, if you can't do something about it, then and don't talk about it. I'm very much that oriented in that manner many times, and Chapin reminded me, but we still need to reflect what people have said and like what the goals are. And I think it's even okay to say, a goal, and I don't know if this is true or not, but like a goal is having more local businesses, and specifically, in the town plan or in town statute, maybe there is nothing we can do, but we wanted to reflect those comments here, like have some way of in the town plan reflecting the comments even when there isn't something. I think in that case, you're right. Uh-oh. There is like, tax, either maybe tax incentives or fee incentives or that type of thing that we could do that would, or like maybe if you're under a certain square footage, you don't have to do XYZ thing because, so that local things will probably be smaller than a bigger like REI Walmart types.
Sorry. By the way, I can see you easily on Zoom, even though it looks like maybe I'm on an island somewhere.
Yeah, you're in Venice, maybe? Venice nice? Okay, but you can still hear us, Chapin, right?
I can hear fine.
Did I reflect the conversation correctly?
Go to the home dashboard and try that.
Yeah.
I think this HDMI cable is a crap and it like isn't functioning.
It's because we bought it on sale, right?
Because we bought this HDMI cable that we possibly could. And it's going through an like 3 different adapters down there.
Okay, as long as we are still live, right?
You are.
And we can hear Chapin. We're good. We know what Chapin looks like. We're all aware. We can even see it. Look at that.
There we go.
It's fine.
That was fast.
Yeah, it's just okay.
The
okay.
HDMI is not participating.
We're moving. We're not good.
Boy, Matt, I never saw attachment A approved that fast.
That was actually the official map amendment. Attachment A is later in the evening.
Okay.
So they did, however, approve the amendment to Blair Park, taking the streets out of the VTSU campus. So
VTSU will be happy. Okay. Thank you. All right. But I guess going back to your point, yes, I think one thing to do is not to spend boatloads of time on things that you're not sure you can affect, and say, hey, this is something that looks like a priority. And then we can bring it back to this kind of larger group conversation and say, what is it that we could do to create more local business interest in task corners or in the village? I mean, one thing we could do in the village, and we already, did we pass those bylaws?
We're still working on it.
Emily, you could have totally just told me we did and I would have moved on.
I would love to say
if we could do it that way, that would be
great.
Yes, those are all done. So those bylaws would change it so that you could do more like like a coffee shop in the village, which right now is not a thing.
A little bit more, but it's like zoning, like even in tap corner, zoning can only do so much to encourage development, and there's all these other rules and factors at play. I would encourage folks, if you're finding where you're bumping up against, well, the town doesn't have a role over that. Okay, what state agency or organization does have a role in that, and where can we partner or advocate with them for, especially business development, transportation, a lot of those things that are going to be pointing to more regional groups or statewide entities.
I feel as though we've reached a good place on that in my group, on the fact that we get a lot of requests for street trees and good shade and good street trees, helping to calm traffic and so forth. And shade is climate change makes it hotter. And we have some actionable items about working with the state to maybe take over some of Route 2, and so that we can plant trees closer to the road, and getting some more professional help about street trees, like having an arborist and maybe a tree board. We have some actionable steps that we can take locally to work towards a goal that we really don't have enough control of right now.
All right, shall we hand it over to you, Emily, to go through? We're gonna, oh, now we can't see the screen.
Do you unplug the HDMI and let's just like give it a moment?
Which one is that?
That
While that's happening, would you like me to float the idea I have that's sort of cross subgroup?
That'd be great.
It needed a moment.
So is it okay if I talk, Emily?
Yes, please go ahead, Chapin. Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you fine. We can even see.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I'm in a low chair, so my thing is anyway. So I realize we're getting a lot of input on things that we already have, and it's hard to get good input on things we don't yet have. So when we as a planning commission envisaged form-based code, we could see some things that would have to happen to make it be better. And one of those is that we think we need to have some municipal infrastructure that we don't currently believe in having. For instance, the stormwater, if you do a stormwater for each project, you wind up with the interruption of these stormwater ponds. If you do it municipally, you can have shared stormwater facilities for multiple buildings. And you can then, in fact, make them into walkable, enjoyable green spaces, like the ones we talked about that's on Market Street in South Burlington. And so we were realizing as a planning commission that it would be good to move in that direction, and that's a change for the town. So it's something to put in the town plan. What I realized, actually, thanks to Reed Carr, didn't come from me, is that if in the future there's to be ground sourced heat pumps or geothermal heating in any of the stuff at Taft Corners, that too would benefit from being for more than one property. And so you start to think, would there be a municipal feature of when we put in municipal shared stormwater infrastructure, including piping for geothermal, and treat it as a municipal utility. And that's pretty far out there. But I realized, in the 25 to 50 year view, if we put it in to be working out whether we should, there are some steps we could take, and it in fact might make a lot of sense.
They were just talking about that on NPR on my drive-in.
Great.
about like basically a co-op geothermal, like shared geothermal it was in Chicago, but building it in the alleys. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. And some of the geothermal projects in cities take advantage of the fact that there's a lot of heat in the wastewater running down the sewer, and there's heat from the roads in the sun and so forth. And so there's actually some heat generated by the activity happening on those grounds that can be recovered in addition to the heat that you would store and get from the ground below or from wells. And of course, geothermal is a broad topic, and there's lots of different ways to do it. But in an area where we're putting in stormwater infrastructure, it seems to me like we're already disturbing the surface, and it's somewhere that you could put pipes in the ground in one way or another, whether it's wells or pipes. So that was my cross group thought, and it doesn't even fit well into any one category within the yellow team.
Yeah. I'm definitely, the geothermal is a totally new idea to me. I think it's interesting. And I do like the idea of like, what are the things we should start thinking about down the road? And I definitely am interested in the question around stormwater, because I do think that that's both environmentally and just aesthetically and as a resource, something we should be more organized around.
I'm trying to find the picture of when I inspected the state police barracks.
Oh yeah.
They have a geothermal, and I was like, this needs like a full-time person to manage the system. There are a lot of bells and whistles and monitors and things. It's like, yeah, that totally makes more sense to do it on
the new police barracks.
The new police barracks, yeah, they have a geothermal. It's this whole room. I felt like I was in like a submarine or something, or like so many pipes.
Like big wheels.
Big wheels and big pipes and lots of
Wow.
BB screens and things.
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah,
I'm trying to find the picture. I feel like that was the only thing I was allowed to take a picture of when I was in there. I was like, "Ooh, can I take a picture of that?" No.
Of course, it's one more thing to add to our parking lot behind the town hall.
right.
There we go.
Yeah, that went so well the first time around.
Jason, that reminds you, that reminds me, I need to send you something that I think you'll think is cool related to solar canopies,
Oh, good.
like a new fangled thing, so.
Oh, cool. By
Yeah.
the way, I never let on, but I thought if we do a solar canopy in the back parking lot ever, it might just be on the southern half of it. And because it would be slanted towards the south, the high end would be towards the building where the snowplow and stuff has to go. And it really might, trying to do it through over the whole area might be prohibitive, but doing it over half of it might be really effective.
Going back to that, the ideas that you were talking about, like stormwater and geothermal, is that something that goes under, and you're talking about like the cross, like it's like a cross team thing, but is that like facilities and services, or is it like environment, like where, who wants to claim it?
It cuts across departments as well as topics, yes.
This is where I think we're gonna start to see that. So like Green Team has utilities and facilities. We're certainly gonna wanna talk about how does the town interact with stormwater today? Because we literally have a stormwater utility, and I think what we wanna do is talk about, well, what does it do today and what does it not do today, and why? And we may lead to stormwater utilities can do other things that ours doesn't do right now, and here are the reasons for that. And then maybe there's a handoff into economic development that says, go look in economic development. And we've thought internally as a staff a little bit about some symbology we could add to some of this, so that it might be in the Green Team's chapter, but it might have a tag or something that lines up with a tag that you then go and see in economic development. And of course, we're pulling it all into one big implementation chapter at the end, where we can start to actually show that synergy to people and say, you know, this task actually came from 4 different places in the plan, and that might actually, you know, elevate that task in priority.
Exactly. The yellow team has water quality, and that's where I started with it.
Yep.
No, I like that idea of the multiple, showing the multiple different spots where it hits the.
There's a point in this project where we are going to get absolutely nuts with Post-it notes. That's the plan.
Look at that thing. Holy moly.
Neat.
Oh, wow.
Neat. Sweet.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Sharing state secrets. You sure that's not a distillery?
That'd be so BSP right there.
Picture of Eric's window.
Other duties as assigned. Aaron was like, make a new header for Eric. I was like, okay. Oh, I do have the photo of what the photo collage for the report will look like. So each cover page, this happens to be the one that has Shayla and Chapin in it.
Oh, nice. That's really nice.
So it would say homes and people in our font here, and then it would say featuring photos from X date at the library.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Simon.
With Simon.
Somebody has to have the Simon sunglasses photo when he was from the future.
Oh my gosh.
I think I have. It's a great picture of him.
That's good.
I love how he pointed out how the accent in Williston changed into the future.
Yeah. Did anybody record that at any one point?
I think the one at Williston Woods got recorded.
Yeah.
But we're thinking we can put the script in the appendix, and we can include Simon's ad lib where it's like, my how the Vermont accent has changed.
Englishman.
You know what's neat is what we've just been talking about these cross-departmental, cross-topic area things. Is we should have a weave pattern as our motto for this whole project.
Something like that, huh?
Yeah, something like that sort of thing that I just saw on the wall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we will be able to bring that idea back in. And I think it's good. I think the other thing I see as we're working on our sections is there's a theme of thinking about what the next steps are for the town, taking on sort of new and different functions that it has not in the past. So stormwater is an example of that. There are others, and there's also a big theme of regional and statewide coordination and thinking beyond the town's borders. It's not that both of those haven't been talked about a little bit before, but you know, you've heard us all sort of bemoan that the 2016 town plan is a rehash of 2011, is a rehash of 2005. And population wise, yes, but especially functionally, the town was a much smaller place in 2005 or in 2000 when that plan started to be written. And there is that time to start thinking about, if we start doing other things, what are those things? And what are, you know, you want to add things carefully. And if we start working with other municipalities, what does that start to look like? But I think both of those are big thematic elements that are going to play out through a lot of this.
That comes in transit too. You know, bus routes have to connect towns.
Yep.
I think about the fact that we're writing this town plan in the cloud, and when I got here, Susan Lamb, who was working what are now, I think, at least 3 different positions, used to take the tape drive home at night, and that was our data security.
Oh, yeah.
That was our backup, and so that's just 15 years ago, you know.
Well, and also little things like a desire to have more businesses or more diverse businesses in the village and at tap corners and wherever. That also puts pressure on things like broadband and wireless broadband increasingly, which changes the complexion of that conversation a little bit as people, you know, consider where they want to have antennae and do they want to have antennae and all that other stuff. It's an important part of it.
Yeah, so that's an entire utility that people weren't thinking the same way about when the 2016 plan was originated. That's become really, you know, critical.
Yeah, AT&T has just announced in California they're exiting the landline business completely, and it's probably going to spread across the country because, I mean, people just aren't using it anymore, and so they're using a wireless modality as their business communications, and that says you better have reliable wireless broadband, like some kind of tower somewhere near, I don't know, here, that would give us the ability to connect people wherever they need to be connected. Yeah.
Only there was some sort of tall structure.
Only
nearby.
Just saying.
Where it wouldn't stick out.
Yeah, like it'd be disguised behind, I don't know, exciting or something.
Like a steeple.
All right.
I'm gonna stop now.
So what, do we want to actually look at, did you want to actually look at plans, or do you want to just kind of highlight what's the best way for you to?
Yeah, we can pull up and go through each team, and like no judgment on any team, including my own, about where the formatting and verbiage is at.
I'm happy to be the
formatting.
guinea pig on
Aesthetics need not apply.
All right.
but I can
Yeah, I'm pulling up here right
just like
here.
summarize some of the things we talked about, and also just remember like what our areas are. So the first thing Green Team has on its plate is the future land use map and land use boundaries. So
My share isn't sharing.
no.
I'm just scrolling through it on my own.
Oh, thought you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we put I'm trying to remember where I'm all the way down into the first page of topic 1. So
I think further down then, I think this is.
Yeah. Cause that's like the,
Okay, there.
yeah. So this is all kind of all over the place right now, but just some things we thought about showing. The graph here is the top tax receipt towns in Vermont and how those have changed over the years, Williston being the red line on the top. So the big story on this one actually is, I don't know how well you can see the gray line, that's Colchester. Colchester really went up big time from 2010 to 2015 and has been going up since, and is now the second town behind us. And I know they have Costco, but I don't think of Colchester as having a lot of other tax receipts, but they do. And so there you go.
And this is local option sales tax.
Well, this is all sales tax.
All sales
So this isn't local option revenue. This is total taxable,
When
total
was
taxable
Costco
sales.
open, do we know?
Oh,
90,
yeah,
3 or 4.
it's old. It's been in the
Super
mix.
old, so it's not on this chart.
No, you're not seeing an increase because of Costco on this.
What was the decrease from 05 to 2010?
The decrease,
In Williston.
just the recession.
Yeah, the recession of 2008.
Okay.
2008 recession. So although that is a big, it's over $50 million volume decrease. So it was, but I mean, you got to think back to 2008, think back to cash for clunkers, nobody's buying cars, the bailouts. People are having their adjustable rate mortgages go through the roof. Like it was
That's bad.
pretty bleak. And obviously it's bounced back up since then. So Colchester going up is part of the story, and there's a combined line for Rutland City and Town that goes way down over the same time. And if you want to see the story of dying malls and a struggling downtown, Rutland really
So
tells that
Burlington's
story.
orange?
South Burlington is orange, so they've steadily increased a little bit, not as fast as Williston. So they're in third.
Where's Burlington?
Burlington's yellow. So Burlington's kind of where they were in 2005. These are not inflation adjusted numbers. This is just dollars. So, but that's not I'm not even down into land use boundaries yet. This is just a graph we're looking at. This is data that's available in the big spreadsheet. Any team can tap into it. If you want to,
Scroll to see like stuff we did.
yeah. So yeah, this is a lot of the stuff Lauren has popped in for us talking about. And then I think I started writing some of these planning history ones of just, our zoning's been pretty traditional. We've generally divided things up by use. The land use boundaries, the boundaries between the different zoning districts have been really consistent pretty much since Williston has had zoning. And there's the big outcome of that is the town is really pretty rural south of I-89 and north of Mountain View Road. And, denser in the residential district and obviously more developed in Tap Corners. Yeah, there's the original boundaries. So you can kind of see
1970.
kind of see how that's there's been some fiddling at the edges of the industrial zone.
Village is here. Adams Farm Market's here.
Yeah. So thinking about there's some real benefits to that pretty dogged consistency. The rural stays rural, the development concentrates. There's always pressure to move boundaries around. We see it at the fringes. We in fact had that map up because there's a guy with a retail industrial property on Industrial Ave, who's just over the line in the residential district, and we brought this map up and said, yep, that was built before zoning existed, and it was put into the residential district just because of where the town decided to put the line. You'll see a request to change that eventually. But you know,
it is currently industrial, it's zoned in residential because it's grandfathered in.
right, so it's a legal non-conforming use. The zoning came after the use, it gets to stay, but being legal non-conforming really limits what you can do.
Next. Yeah.
You can't expand it. It's hard to change it from one non-conforming use to another. It's doesn't seem like it's going away. And that's something actually Ken Belleville always used to say that stuck with me was, when you make something non-conforming, you're saying that you want it to go away eventually. And if you don't want to say that you want it to go away, you might want to think about what your land use rules say. So another conversation about land use is things like Adams Farm, a retail use in a suburban residential zoning district. Seems like people really like it. Nobody seems to have a problem that there's commercial activity happening there. Should the zoning continue to make something like that non-conforming, or should there be some flexibility written into that RZD that allows for things like commercial corners or village market type stuff? The RZD is your absolute bone stock suburban residential zoning district today, plus a bunch of density because of the home act now.
So that came out a bunch in our conversation with Mickey actually last time, which was this idea of the rural ag and like what people love about it, like the farmers market at Isham's, which is not something that you can do, just anywhere. And like, what is that? Like, what are those things that we think are really community building things that are not made easy by our zoning? And either they're legal non-conforming or they're just like very specific, like they have a wedding barn and it's an event space, and apparently they're allowed to do it because it's a historic banquet hall. But do we only want to allow event spaces at historic banquet halls? Like, what if you build a new barn? Like why are we, what's the thought process? Like, besides just that's the way it is. What is the thought process behind that?
I think something we did
list
is like some like non-conforming uses we could think of last time, maybe it was below this, but like kind of along the vein of like, if it's non-conforming, then like, should it still be? Maybe we only got a couple in, but yeah.
Yeah, Birdside Marine.
Yep, it's on there. Yeah, so thinking about some of those that, this commission's had its experience with, Chimney Supply. River Cove Vet is just a commercial use on the corner of River Cove Road and Route 2A, but it's in the RZD. And that's brought up some complications when we talk to them about what they'd like to do with that to keep that viable. Gateway districts, Gateway South, the area around Interstate 89 exit, you could see in that old map Emily had up, like that was a commercial zone from the beginning, with this idea that there would be sort of like travel services around that exit. But particularly south of the highway where the slopes get steep, there's some competing interests around wanting screening and buffering and limited clearing and other things that make that more challenging. Access isn't great. When I first started working here, the zoning didn't allow most of the uses that were happening on Hurricane Lane. All the warehousing uses were non-conforming. And as that zoning went through the adoption process, those building owners came and said, hey, like, our buildings aren't going anywhere anytime soon. We'd like to continue to be able to use them and lease them to people. And so we wrote a little amendment that said if a building has the characteristics of a warehouse, it can continue to be a warehouse, but you can't build new ones. So there are solutions to that kind of like, what are we inheriting from the past and where do we want this area to go? There's a discussion in there I brought up about the remaining sort of box store zone, the gateway, or not gateway south, mixed use commercial.
Yeah.
Not form-based code, but Home Depot, Walmart, behind the farmhouse, behind Maple Tree Place. What's the vision for that area? You know, for a while we thought maybe we were gonna write a form-based code that encapsulated that area, but we didn't, we compromised on that. But those development standards as they exist today haven't gotten a lot of attention. Nobody's really used them to build anything. They don't allow a conventional big box store. There are those who would like to be able to build conventional big box stores in those areas. The town in the past has said, you know, no, that's not something we're interested in. Is there something the town is interested in there? So part of it is going through the various keeping in mind the land use designations are the exact same boundaries as the zoning districts. So they're pretty interchangeable here. That's another thing to actually think about. There's zoning districts where there's a lot of action and where the commission has done a lot of adjusting and a lot of thinking, and there's ones that have been kind of just left alone.
Stagnant, yeah.
Because there's not much happening there. But maybe part of why there's not much happening there is the zoning just doesn't align with what anybody wants to do, and is that the outcome you're looking for? Back to the point of land use boundaries and zoning boundaries, if you go to the South Burlington future land use map, they do like a color fade. So there's not a hard boundary between like the Market Street form-based code designation and my neighborhood right behind it. There's a fade. And there's a sense there that the land use designation boundary is a little flexible within some boundaries. The zoning boundary could be inclusive of this parcel on Heinsberg Road or not, and either way, it would still be in compliance with the land use map. So another thing to think about is your future land use map that's in your town plan does not have to be as exact or prescriptive as your zoning map does. Your zoning map needs to be informed
Hard
by
for my
it.
brain.
Yeah, that sounds messy.
Tricky for me to swallow that one.
How does that not get messy? How does that not get contentious?
Well, I think it does, but it gets contentious anyway. So New England Chimney Supply is a great example. They're assembling land, they're buying residential and Gateway West zoned land adjacent to their industrial zoned land. They'd like to expand, they'd like to move that boundary. And to move the zoning boundary, you've got to amend the town plan and move the land use designation boundary as well. Now, we had some words in the town plan in the past that said, hey, this whole area in a fuzzy sort of way is kind of evolving. It's not like the rest of the residential or industrial area, and it needs some attention. That's sort of cracking the door open to saying, maybe this zoning boundary could be here or here, and that would be okay. We went through a process where we created the Gateway West zone, and we tried to address that, and it solved some problems and created some others. So having a land use map that says, generally speaking, this is rural, generally speaking, this is suburban, is actually, when that one owner comes in, like my roadside marine guy, to make him be in the industrial zone, which is right next door to him, we would also have to change the future land use map in the town plan. Whereas if that map was a little more like that, it's a little blurry, you might not, you might say, actually, this is in bounds with the town plan. We can consider that maybe this parcel should go from one to the other. So, yeah, we all kind of commented a lot when South Burlington circulated this, because it was something I don't think any of the other communities had really ever done. But it does acknowledge that the comp plan is a little more general and the zoning is a lot more specific. But I think the big theme in land use.
There's a poltergeist
for
in
you.
his computer today.
It's
Going
the other
great.
computer anyway.
Why did it open my Teams? It's so rude.
Now you don't signal again.
Yeah.
See our little like emojis.
Yeah.
But are you saying with all this, we don't want to restrict to particular, we want to say preferentially, this is how we want it, so that there's some flexibility, is that what?
Maybe just let it
Well,
pause a moment.
I think what you want to think about, and actually what we've talked about a little bit now that I'm recalling it, was there might be some places in town where that boundary should be
Because I was using it.
a hard line. And there might be other places in town where more flexibility is called for. So the village land use designation ends at Interstate 89. The village is here, it's here around Route 2. It wouldn't make any sense to plan for anything south of Interstate 89 to be the village, like straight behind Town Hall. Maybe going up Oak Hill Road, you might do something, but that might be one where you say, you know, here, really the density, the mixed uses, everything, we're really looking for that to stay north of Interstate 89, and you draw, you know, a hard line. The designations in Taft Corners, I'm just looking at the old future land use map. They name all of the sub-zoning districts in Taft Corners: mixed use residential, mixed use commercial, business park, Taft Corners. You might have a land use plan that just says, this is the Taft Corners Growth Center. Some of it is a little more residential, some of it is a little more commercial. Down near the highway, it's a little more big box. But in a general sense, this is an area that has our most intense mix of commercial and residential uses. And there are development standards that are different within it. But the town plan just says the general idea here is this is our growth center.
So with that though, it will be more flexible and less red tape for people to develop or
Right.
make use of this area as more both commercial and residential use in the future.
Right, so then when you were having a zoning boundary conversation, it might not necessarily also be a town plan conversation. Another example is that discussion of it's rural north of Mountain View Road, it's ag rural zoning district. The sewer pipes are right there in Mountain View Road. There's no reason you couldn't develop at a residential zoning district density and pattern on the entire north side of Mountain View Road all the way to the top of the hill. Physically, there's no reason. There's been a desire reflected in all these land use boundaries that not happen. But the only thing that means it doesn't happen is a future land use plan boundary and a zoning boundary. There's no physical reason you couldn't do that. And you know, the other thing that Williston has done really well is it has provided services like water and sewer in accordance with its future land use pattern. So unlike South Burlington, we don't have areas where we've said for 30 years, we've said we want this to be rural, but by the way, here's water and sewer, develop it, you know, which would allow you to develop at all kinds of, you know, densities that would not be rural.
Well, and then contrast that to like South Burlington, who they extended sewer service throughout the town, so.
Right, so then you set yourself up for an argument at that point.
Yeah.
So those are some things to sort of think
it's like
about.
putting in speed bumps versus making the road narrow and windy, right? Like you made the road big and straight.
People are gonna wanna,
They're gonna go fast.
it's just inevitable that people will want to, you know, use that to their advantage. So you wanna do it with where your goals are aligned with what the market's gonna look for. So, you know, and you know, the country is full of places where someone said, well, hey, I'll pay to build the sewer, just let me do my subdivision out wherever. And the problem, of course, is there's all these other things that happen when you do that. There's provision of services, there's more people driving everywhere, there's all of the things that might happen with that. So those are some of the things we're thinking about.
So make this look like this.
Maybe, or maybe some places it looks like that and some places it doesn't. the way we did it, when I was talking about that gateway zoning district that was created around, Brownell Road and Route 2. We didn't do anything fancy with the coloring of the maps, we just drew a circle around it and labeled it, pay attention to this area, something, something needs to happen here. That also kind of cracks the door open for the planning commission to then take up a zoning change and say, well, the town plan said we might do this. And that's the idea, is you really don't want to have to amend the town plan every time you amend the bylaw. You want to be amending the bylaw because the town plan told you to, or told you to consider it. As much as I'm saying, don't use the word consider. Yeah, so there's those labels. Those are the ones we're working under today. So, yeah, we didn't change any land use designation boundaries when we did form-based code, because we had that box that said, do form-based code.
Something that to me has affected the Gateway West is the increased noise from the F-35s and the toxic plume underneath residential homes. To me, in addition to increased traffic on Williston Road, it just seems like it's becoming less hospitable to residential uses. Mostly through things that we had no control over.
Do we get a lot of noise complaints from F-35s in Williston? Because they're big.
It came up in the responses from people, yeah.
Yeah, I think we got a lot here when it started, and then people have kind of given up complaining to us about it. But yeah, we heard it in the town plan. Yeah, and this is actually something to think about when you're thinking about that. Yeah, exactly. When you're thinking about that, is, we do have some residential areas that are
right
in that outer, especially that outer boundary. And it's also the kind of thing when someone says, well, why'd they go and build that U-Haul or that big building or that car dealership down by Industrial Ave and Williston Road? And it's like, well, it's kind of the only use that makes sense there. And it's highly accessible, developable land that the town did not focus on conserving, chose to focus conservation efforts elsewhere. To me, that outcome that you're seeing buildings going up there, it's kind of like what you would expect. But sometimes we certainly get that citizen feedback. I can't believe they're cutting down that forest. There's another building going up. Why? That's why. And also it's why are they doing that? They ought to be building housing. Well, you wouldn't build housing there.
This is just noise mitigation, so that's just the most intense area?
Yeah, so when it says, when the label says DNL, that's the daily noise load.
Cause like my coworker lives by Guy's Farm and Yard, and I live on 2A south of 89, and we can hear it. It'd be like, one sec, it's coming over my house, and I know it will come over my house soon. So our call is just like dead. And it was interesting how many people, like the people who work, it was interesting how many times it came up in some of the survey responses. So I don't know how much, it's relevant to our town plan conversation, but it was a no of no.
The thing to think about with this is not the 65, but the 75, the purple and I guess 70 and then 75. Those are levels where you really don't want people to live, because this is an average daily load. This is both volume and duration of exposure. So this matters a lot for anybody who's using federal money to do anything, because if they're going through the NEPA process, they're having to show that what they're doing is not exposing people to unhealthy levels of noise. And there's some stuff about the way noise and even light interrupts sleep. You begin to see cancer clusters when people live near this stuff, because you get woken up at night, you don't even realize you've been woken up at night, but it's happening every single night, and there's some real impacts to people's health, when that happens.
And those are seriously high numbers. I mean, those,
Yeah.
the dB levels there, I mean, 75 dB, 30 seconds or more is permanent hearing loss.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, you don't want to be exposed to that.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
yeah, so the 65 noise load is, as I understand it, considered, livable your whole life, but it may not be pleasant. And it does make me think about, like the Lamplight Acres, neighborhood, that portion of Lamplight, that is one of the older, more affordable
Yeah.
neighborhoods with big lots in Williston, and over time, what is the evolution? It's a really nice neighborhood. But what is the evolution of that if there is more airport noise? And that noise map, that's not specific to F-35s, that's just everything that happens at the airport.
It's a weighted average, so it adds a 10 decibel penalty for aircraft between 10 PM and 7 AM.
Yeah.
So if we want to, so if we're going back to sharing our plans for groups, like, is there anything about this that we want to put in our plan, like in our group's doc to revisit, just so everyone has a chance to share what their group is working on? I'm just not sure what part is, like, what part's useful, like when I think about like our doc and what I want to see about other people's and how they're doing it. Like I said, yeah, I guess I just kind of want to see how other people are approaching it, but I'm curious what other people want to see from other people's plans as well, as we're talking through them.
I mean, I think the idea of the fuzzy boundaries will take me a minute to adjust to that idea. But like that, if that's something that you guys are interested in, like that, like talking about consideration of that, I do think that noise level map, I don't know what we do about it, but I think that is, I mean, a concern of mine is focusing any residential development anywhere there, especially if it's gonna be, if we're really trying to promote affordable housing, we do not want to end up with affordable housing in the place where like, the noise level is even unpleasant, I obviously hear the airplanes in my house, but it's not like disrupting my life at all. So I think having those maps and having that reference somewhere. And I don't know how we make that actionable, because we don't want to make all the houses there non-conforming. That's not the idea. It's just like, when concentrating on affordable projects or, residential projects, really taking that into consideration.
So it was interesting in the FAQ was it said,
or sound insulation, you could do
F-35. It said something where it was like the new 2024 map will talk about the F-35s.
It said the 24 update will include data from the F-35. Because
So
I think that was pre-F-35.
Oh, that's a pre-F-35.
That might be pre-F-35. And so they're working on an update now.
Yeah, one thing that happened is the background airport map impact area got quite a bit bigger, but the news was so heavily focused on F-35s because it was right when they got going that story got completely buried. It was
just
sort of
there's more traffic.
Just more traffic, better modeling, bigger planes, bunch of stuff, more frequent. And that was something somebody told me was, there was a real gift to Burlington Airport when the F-35s started operating when they did, because nobody paid attention to the story that the airport's noise map got quite a bit bigger. And wrapping it back to land use, I think you can even have a section of the town plan that just says, the airport's loud and has gotten louder, and it's impacting more residential properties in Williston, and what should we do about that?
We're contributing to beta, so we have
Electric planes. I mean, modern.
So here's the 2018 plan where it's just touching a little bit of industrial. And then the 2023 is where it extends down into some of White Birch Lane and Kirby.
Yep. So that was something that was actually, pretty significant for Williston. but didn't
They
get a
didn't
lot
have
of.
the F-35s in 2023 map?
No,
Probably because it was adopted in 2023, but the map was probably generated much before that.
they're like us, takes time.
Seems like a labeling
Yeah,
error.
35, when did they get here?
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
2018, 2019?
I got some, everything before 2020.
1918, no, before that, 17, probably.
Yeah,
They came after I moved here, I thought.
Did they?
It was
When did you-
2018,
2018?
no. 20s. Maybe they didn't come, I was.
I mean, it's
moved in
definitely before
2016.
2020 because
Yeah.
that was
Mhm.
yeah,
noticeable.
yeah, when they weren't.
Uh-huh.
The 158th Fighter Wing F-35A arrival ceremony was held on October 19th, 2019.
There you go.
Thank you, Senator Leahy. Okay.
You took 4 years
Um,
to make that now.
I just
It's
think
a process, you know. You work for the government, you know.
I'll just put a call, like how should noise impact?
Yes.
F-35
I think it's
be,
just
referenced or like accommodated, I don't want to accommodate them, I want them to, whatever, but.
Well,
Like.
but
be
even just the
referenced
airport, I
or-
mean, I think it is a really good point, like. Forget the F-35s, no matter what, there's gonna be an airport there,
Mhm.
and we should be considering
Considered, that's.
Yeah.
the sound.
well, for example, it wouldn't be a place I would do a lot of public infrastructure investment in hopes that housing would
The
show
new
up.
school,
It
right,
wouldn't be a place I'd put a planned public facility like a school.
community center, I mean, like,
right.
that's a really good, like, community center note, like, let's not put the community center.
Under the plan.
Doing yoga.
I was on a very nice mountain bike ride at Mud Pond, one of the first times I experienced the F-35s, and they came ripping over, and like my whole existence was just a jet engine sound for like 5 minutes on the side of this
It's
hill.
extraordinary.
When it first started, it was very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really good, like, just considerations of we're planning for how future land uses will lay out in the town. What are the things we should be thinking about? What are the things we want to build on? What are the things we want to change course on or add to? That's the purpose of the future land use discussion. And in the end, it's a little bit like what should the zoning boundaries be, but that's one of a bunch of things you would be talking about here.
I'm sorry, I'm just.
You
Down,
just-
just down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Rabbit hole of.
This is how we
Alright,
become planners.
let's look at just for, in the interest of time, why don't we move on to other teams, just so we can see the sort of variety of fabulous formatting.
Or lack thereof.
We're just used to your formatting, Emily, so when nothing is formatted in that way, we all react.
Let's get my team out of the way. Nothing's been formatted.
Let's be judgment free zone.
So right now we just have our running list of ideas where most of our conversation has been very similar to the other conversations about farmers markets, these ag uses, and districts that currently have fewer mixed use commercial standards. Events and activities by external parties and nonprofits, so like supporting more events, maybe they're not town run, but they're community run. Also that same conversation about historic barns. Essex Five Corners, so thinking about like youth programming and spaces, there's the CHIPS program in Essex and a historic building. Thinking about how the current town plan talks about the old brick church and like maybe the basement would be a great youth or senior center because it's proximity to the library. brief bullet point here, but a pretty significant conversation about updating the language to be culturally appropriate to today. So our current town plan has no discussion of the Abenaki. I know Chapin has mentioned that he has a contact of somebody who's a tribal leader. So taking this like beyond a land acknowledgement and the weave, how are we weaving? Recognizing, you know, the much lengthier history of Williston, even today in our policies. Work from home, and that was another big thing that I noticed. I think when we asked people in the survey, where did they work? The top response was work from home, working elsewhere in the county, I believe, and retired or don't work.
Right, I do think, I wonder if that is driving some of the coffee shop
Yeah,
type.
in a way, right, because they are fully utilizing the space that they live, right? Compared to most of us who go somewhere else and work, right?
And we have had them in the past in the village. We had the village coffee shop, I think it was called, where the vet is now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That was kind of nice when it was there, but didn't last very long. Then kind of came and went.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about moving away from NAICS code, having a land use standard of, or a goal to.
What is that? What's that?
So NAICS is an industry classification
Oh, that's it.
system.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and the more numbers in the code, the more specific the use. It's helpful in some ways for understanding all the different things that can be out there, but it gets really tricky because one use might totally make sense as an adaptive use of an existing building, but it's not in the table.
Happy to support.
You scrolled past something, it was like, be able to walk 5 or do 5 different things without driving, and that's in like another area where it's like there would be like cross team. And I really like that idea.
Of course. But in reality, that's what majority become town or city. Because as we progress, right, we should be like able to do a lot of things without moving to another place, right?
Well, I mean, it's so
Which we-
interesting, right? Because like that's one of the top things that people said they love.
Yeah,
They don't have to leave.
yeah.
You know, they can do all these things, except they have to drive to every single one of them. And so like that whole idea of like building on that strength. The strength is you don't have to leave. Build on the strengths, so you don't have to drive. You don't have to leave and you don't have to drive.
Yeah.
In folding the village master plan into the chapters, this mainly comes up with first getting the village bylaw done, which is on my list, but also the current village master plan doesn't talk about class 1 town highway, and having a different road in the village. Maybe there's parallel parking on each side and better crosswalk bump outs. Maybe some improved traffic flow around the school and library. So thinking about, yes, maybe we want class 1 in Taft Corners, but would it be beneficial in the village as well? And thinking about, right now, it feels like a drop and go.
It wouldn't be the whole spot? It wouldn't be that whole section? Sorry.
Like from Old Stage to what do you mean the whole section?
I was thinking if we were gonna take over Route 2, I mean, I know
The
it's
entire
like
thing.
way,
The entire
yes. Well, not the entire thing, not like, like I was thinking like from, I don't know, like near the post office to like past Quickie Mart.
Oh.
That's not
Likely not.
Okay.
I think,
Right, it probably would be, like, if we were to do a section in the village, it might be from stop sign to stop sign, and then pick up again, maybe like near Talcott Road intersection to the post office, and then that corridor in between will be,
Would stay.
be a car sewer with the bike path somewhere near it.
Okay.
But
That is very helpful. That's not how
I
I'm
mean,
envisioning
nothing, it's like, you never know.
You never know.
It
That
could
seems
be.
wild, like, if the state owns it, do we still, I guess it's just my ignorance. If the state owns all of it right now, we plow it, right, or does
No.
the state plow it? So like, if we have this chunk and this chunk, but they have this chunk, are they just gonna come and?
They're gonna
plow this
stop.
one
They're
chunk?
gonna- They're gonna lift up
Oh
their
my
plow
God, why is
blades.
he doing this? This is so rude.
And
And
then-
just keep
Yeah.
going. That seems like we could come up with, I don't know.
Of course, that's what our plows do as we go across Route 2.
Uh-huh.
You know, our town plows will plow, North Williston Road and then turn right onto Route 2 and lift their plow until they get to Slate Barn Drive,
You said to me.
it. Bye, teams. The next person to use that computer is gonna be like.
I don't know if this is the time to bring this up, but I was wondering if we want to put something in the town plan about taking over the Cirque Highway right of way so that we can have that access to that for north-south rec path.
Where is
Show me
that?
on a map what that means. I'm like this. Yes. That question.
So. Um. So here's Old Stage and Williston Road. You go down the hill, you pass South Ridge Road. It's right here. So, it's before you get to the fire station. But after that, like big farmhouse on the interstate side and the conservation land. And it runs between South Ridge and Allenbrook School. Between Raven Circle and what will be Summerfield and Brennan Woods. And comes out on Mountain View Road. Right now it's mapped on official map as we have a desire for a connection there. So it would be, talking to the state legislature about would the state want to give up that land or allow us to develop something in that land. There's the gas pipeline. It's a big right of way. There is a gas pipeline part of it. The natural gas.
I'm amazed how many people use it as a walking path. I walk past it every day and there are always people on both sides of it with dogs walking north and south on it. It's pretty cool.
Is it mowed?
Yeah.
I didn't know
Well-
that's what that was, so I've been out there.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really pretty.
A little bit of it is mowed by the gas company and not regularly, but a couple times a summer.
And it gets tramped down pretty good by people walking.
Yeah.
Just walk it, yeah, I just created a walking track.
Probably
So-
not supposed to be walking on it, but.
Basically,
Come get us.
Not my
This-
rule to enforce.
Okay, Mom.
so my question is, the state acquired the right of way
Yeah, you
by
can
purchasing
see.
land from people. And then they leased a subterranean thing to the gas company. I'm just wondering if we want to, if we want to start investigating what should happen. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
That's actually shortly after the gas line was put in, because that's disturbance from planting, from burying the pipe.
That's October 2023, so I think that's just after a fall mowing.
Oh, so they just mowed their narrow thing. Okay, sorry. And frankly, I have an ulterior motive in that part of that. Oh, there's when it went in. Yeah. The part of that that's in the distance there on the left sloping up, I would like to be part of Tree Island Park in the future. And on the map, you may have noticed it widens out tremendously there, and it's because they thought there might have been an exit onto Route 2 headed west. Yeah, if you can get the there. You'll see that land as it approaches Route 2 there at the bottom center left. Yeah, you see how wide it gets there. And I'd like to plant trees on more of that.
Go south? Emma?
Mhm.
You go south?
Mhm.
How far does it go south?
Goes way south. It goes down like does it go
To the
Virginia?
interstate. Oh, the
But
gas
it goes
pipeline,
way
yeah.
beyond that, doesn't it?
Oh, the gas pipeline?
No, do they have the right of way
It's just
south?
right away.
It just goes to the highway, to I-89.
I'm sorry, I think it's the gas line.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see off of
Mhm.
where there would be a plan for Cloverleaf space
Oh,
east
okay.
of Hurricane Lane, and then it would come up between along the conserved Mahon Farm.
But it's that wide space just north, just behind the fire station, that I would like to talk with them about giving it to the town to be part of the Tree Island Park. It's right at the very center bottom of the screen now. And I didn't know whether we want to be talking to the state about the entire corridor in terms of being able to start planning a rec path through there.
Mm-hmm. And that also goes along with the joint meeting that Conservation and the Historic and Design Committee had about archaeology, where the gist of it is quality over quantity. And we know from the Cirque right-of-way project, all their archaeological resources, that there are known sites in this area. So can there be more research done? Can it become an interpretive park? So, rather than going after every single project to get the maximum archaeology out of it, which is gonna lengthen timelines and cost on particularly housing developments that we need, rather than focusing our efforts on that, can we focus our efforts on places that are known and doing more archaeological research and preservation, and then interpretive and park stuff? And if this is an indigenous hub, can this become more, and can that be the archaeological focus?
And this is one of those sites because of the Cirque Highway. They did archaeological exploration in the early 2000s and found artifacts right there. And I am planning to have interpretive signage put in that park eventually, which is part of why I was reaching out to Abenaki.
And then the Cirque goes up to the west of Ledgewood, behind CSWD and the Velco transmission facility, or whatever that is, and then to the Winooski River.
It's really the section between Route 2 and Mountain View that I think this town has the most interest in at this point.
And there's just no plan.
I think it got shot down at the federal level, right? Because of some environmental study or something.
I don't
No.
really remember. I thought it was, yeah, I don't know.
It died on the vine. And then the federal grants expired or something, but they could have, yeah. It just died on the vine. There was not the will.
Well put.
Well, it's cool that it's there.
Expression cracks me up.
It's cool that it's there in terms of like, if we could get access to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my question, is just, should we start talking to the state about it? And should we say something in the town plan that sort of starts that process moving ahead?
We say yes.
Mm-hmm.
With apologies, I'm should bow out in about 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I think we didn't have the full 9 p.m. on the agenda. So we can go briefly to the other groups. Andrew, I'm gonna pull up Team Yellow if you want to get going.
Sure, yeah. We had a bit of a review in the last meeting, but I think we were short full members. Starting with land use for rural lands and subdivision design. there is a lot of kind of looking at what our current regulations are and questioning, do we want to change them? Do we want to just keep them the same? I think that we get into the conversation about agricultural uses as well. It's a little bit further down, Emily. It's okay now. A little bit about the agricultural uses, flexibility for farmers to diversify their business models. We actually had Mike Isham here at our Monday staff meeting this week, and it was very interesting to hear about the effort that goes into his farmers market and getting a produce vendor. And
It's been really hard.
It's been really hard. And so these are the small details that farmers are dealing with, and it kind of gets back to the question that Hannah asked, I think, that is, I don't know if there's anything we can really do about that, but what are the larger things that we can do for those businesses?
Yeah. And we did talk about maybe trying to get intensive local vegetable farming on the parcel of land across from the fire station.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that brings in the food system kind of question in Williston, and looking into the future. Is that something the town wants to be involved with? Is that something that the town wants to bring another group into, a nonprofit, to manage a piece of land instead of using it for standard agriculture that we do now? We can kind of move through a little bit quicker, but conservation areas, a big one, and I go to this because the Conservation Commission has been talking about it quite a bit lately, is the state's 30 by 30 goals. The idea is 30% of the land conserved by 3030. There are, let's see, some other action items that we have there, and I think we have a bunch of good ideas throughout most of our topic areas. I think for us, the goal is to organize those ideas and let's see. Once again, talk about cultural resources. There's some overlap a bit with what Emily was talking about. Chapin's food security goals are a little bit further down. Solar is also a very large question in this, and also land use. Do we want solar fields in our ag district, and questions of clearing for solar, and how do we manage land for solar? Chapin, I can probably speak more to this than I can, but it's something we want to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a big question when we think about what we've thought of as rural agricultural so far, and does solar count? And I'm sure that would spark some interesting conversation with the community. But I think it's a really important question.
Yeah. I know that the state has done some analysis on lands that are useful for solar, and Linda, I don't know how much you've looked at stuff related to that, but I know there have been some GIS projects.
Yeah, like you mean the constraints maps and the solar suitability maps.
Yeah, so we can maybe start to see what lands we're actually talking about when we have this conversation.
We were looking for because I've seen it in New York. Many of the apple farms and some of the farms, they are no longer viable to operate their business. So they started lending out their land to become massive solar farm. So that people run their used to be apple farm to chop off all the apple trees and become solar run out, right? I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, some kind of stuff. Is that what we were looking for, or we're going to encourage? I mean, if the state want that kind of renewable stuff, right? And people are also not able to sustain their business, and they can even pay the tax or whatsoever, then is that what we're going to look for, or it's totally off the table?
It's a really good question. There's the factor that we can't regulate
We can,
some of solar development because it's tied into the grid, it's a utility. That said, we probably want to take a look at that and see, you know, if you want to clear a bunch of forested land for that use, then I think it's a question.
Good, can I ask a question? You said we can't regulate solar because it's a utility, so like, when the people came here and presented us their big solar proposal, that was like, we can't regulate any of them anyway? Okay.
So the town does have what's called substantial deference, so meaning that we can comment on solar projects. We don't regulate those projects, but you know, they come in and present, and then we can comment on them and deliver those comments to the regulating body, which is the Public Utility Commission. So so we have a say. It's sort of like we're, you know, like a commenting department or something, you know, so sort of liken it to that.
But as a for instance, I think we can put some regulation in about whether you can mow or not, and whether you can fence or not. And so if somebody proposed one and we said, no, that goes against our zoning because you're closing off a wildlife corridor with fencing, that would bear some weight to the PUC.
It's more like, it's not really tied to our zoning, it's tied to our town plan, which is actually really important. So, you know, think of policies that we would have in our town plan related to solar development on, you know, agricultural fields or in open lands. So if we have policies in our town plan and in the energy plan, the siting policies are relevant here, saying what are the desired sites, what are the constraints.
There's already a map, yeah, and there is a map in the current energy plan, which I am assuming we will continue, which shows all the parking areas, all the impervious surfaces.
Right.
And it's stated that we want to give priority to solar on impervious surfaces, which means primarily on rooftops and over parking lots.
Yeah. And also another thing to consider is that or we might consider, you know, sort of refining in our siting policies is just looking at significant wildlife habitat area and kind of thinking about whether that should be a known constraint, or right now I think it's listed as a possible or potential constraint. Should it be a known constraint? But that's another decision point.
Yeah, but we also have to remember that we are not the only town or state that trying to encourage solar. The whole country is doing it, and if the whole country is putting some level of limitation so that it becoming economically makes sense for people to do it. If we put it in too much constraint and all that, nobody want to do it, right? Because when they do economic study, it doesn't, instead of giving them a 10-year return, it becoming 15-year return, and they say, no, I'm not doing this, right? So we also have to remember how other people are doing it and have to accept some level of checking balance, right? We do it too much, it becomes, they say, no, we're not going to do it here, right? It's sunny out only, 7 months in a year. Right? You know, it's
Not anymore.
right?
No, I agree. I think that where solar and how to encourage solar needs to be
Yes.
an important part. But I do want us to keep going because I don't want to get too stuck on that one.
Andrew, is there anything else you want to cover?
I would scroll down to, let's see, recreation and parks. There's lots of talk about both country parks and more urban, suburban parks. Chapin alluded to the points about trees for shade. There are, once again, a number of goals there. And there's the question of continuing to maintain our current parks and growing our park system.
We also had a desire, just so folks know, like the trails we talked about really getting handle on what easements we have, what we don't, where we want them, like getting our arms around the trail systems in the town and where we want to prioritize development of them.
And another point that you had during that meeting, we were going back and forth about the question of expanding trail connectivity versus expanding where we have trails in town. And so making sure every part of town has access to a trail before connecting those trails, or do we want trails to be connected?
Like right now, just because you can get from Sufferbrook to Mud Pond doesn't mean people are often going from Sufferbrook to Mud Pond.
And is it more important to have maybe some trails north of Mountain View so that a bunch of people in the residential zone can like go up there, you know?
Or people who are looping the school path over and over and over again, that they have
somewhere to go,
Right.
you know, totally. I mean, like, right, most Americans, 30 minutes of physical activity, they're not going 17 miles, they're going 2 miles.
Yeah, in the neighborhoods, like in the airport noise area and then up off of Route 2A, they have like no public trail access right now.
I actually just did, I'll do a little tangent. I just did a GIS project for a class I was taking. And I did an analysis of this, and the Jacob Krantz parcel, so just about as far north in town as you can get, up near, what's the neighborhood?
Eastview Circle.
Eastview Circle is one of our underserved areas, and then the other place that is very obvious is a trail near Hurricane Lane. There is a large swath that's not really nearby any other trail.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I think that can.
Do I get partial credit for that class?
What's that?
Do I get partial credit for that assignment in my class? No.
I could know you in my reflection.
All right, Melinda
Cite my
and
sources.
Jill's group is the last one that we haven't
That's
gone
awesome.
over.
That's what
Kind
it
of
is.
pulling up.
It is.
Yeah, you're doing that.
I'm not in the Zoom meeting. So.
That's okay.
Yeah, we can probably whip through this pretty quickly. Yeah, so basically the first part just deals with population trends. And you can scroll down. Oh, you know, if something's interesting. Okay, yeah, scroll back up to that. That one. So this is just, you know, the aging population. So the reddish is 55 plus, and the bars are 2000 to 2022. So you see that, you know, population is aging, and then the yellow is 19 and under. So there's fewer kids in 2022 than there was in 2000. And then the green is like the middle between 20 and 54. And that's kind of fluctuated. There was a big dip between 2000 and 2010. And then it's kind of grown a little bit since then, grown a bit actually. But so that's, you know, it's kind of nothing that we probably already know that. But anyway, yeah.
I wonder if the work from home influenced that.
If what?
Work from home between 20 and 22, that green band is the working age population. And I wonder if that work from home, like I was curious, but.
Yeah.
It does though, this is just an overlap with the, doing 5 things without driving. Like as the population ages, it becomes so much more important to have the not driving options.
Yeah. So this graph, now we're getting into homes. This graph just shows, the blue is, see, median household income. Yeah, median household income from 1990 to 2022. The red is household income that you would need to afford a median priced home. So it's like, you can see that up until 2000, homeownership, you know, you could argue that it was relatively attainable. And then it's like the gap has just gotten bigger and bigger between, what people are making and what homes cost. So I thought it's kind of interesting. And then this is just sales prices, home sale prices, the distribution of home sale prices. And, you know, most of them are more expensive. And then this is just, we can kind of skip over that. That's from the housing needs study. I just kind of took some graphs. And then basically, if you go scroll up a little, just a little bit, I basically just took the strategies and objectives from the Old Town Plan and kind of commented on them. So there were two main objectives. One had to do with managing growth through residential growth management, and one had to do with expanding housing opportunities. And like kind of what you get is that those two goals are in real tension with each other. And so, okay, so like the strategy of link the residential growth target with the allocation of capacity in the sewage treatment plant. So that, I mean, I don't know, I found that to be really unclear, and we've heard Matt like say over and over how like they both sort of point to each other, these two strategies of managing growth, you know, kind of like the sewage allocation ordinance says, well, growth is managed by growth management. Growth management says it's, you know, managed by the sewer, the sewer allocation ordinance. And, you know, so one question, should the town even be limiting residential growth in this way? And then, you know, I guess Matt, did not go over the, you know, so the recent sewer allocation attachment A, you know, sort of points out the fact that right now, there's not really any reason to limit residential growth. I mean, it shouldn't, sewer allocation should not be a reason for the town to limit residential growth. You know, the town should look at prioritizing the types of development it wants, you know, to allocate wastewater to. And then this other strategy of setting the residential growth target at 80 units each year. Why this number? Why are we limiting residential growth? Why not limit commercial growth? Like this is, growth management is never applied to commercial growth, just residential. So should that be something that, you know?
And are we, so two questions. One, I dragged everybody through a lengthy conversation about sewer allocation last meeting. Sorry, everyone. Basically saying this, like, enough. We need to relook at this whole thing.
Right,
That's
right,
silly.
exactly. So that,
Yeah.
I mean, it worked when it was designed, and we're just like Matt was saying earlier, like we're such a different place, it doesn't make any sense anymore. But we're not, like, I don't, you're just commenting on these as like interesting. We're not moving them.
No,
sort of to Matt's point, one thing I want to be careful about is I don't want to like, I don't want to forget about the old town plan, but I don't want to just rinse and repeat it.
And the reason, like the reason, so I was struggling with like sort of coming up with stuff, you know, similar to a lot. So I'm like, I'm just gonna look at these old things and I'm just gonna list them out and just go through. And so most of these, like you'll notice all these notes, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. So there's no need to repeat stuff that's already been done, right? So those can just, as far as I can tell, just be, you know, deleted.
And I say though, are we bold enough to say we are having such a housing price gap between income and affordability, right? So are we going to bold enough to say the residential growth that we put it in is no longer in line with reality today?
I think that's
probably, I think we're to call it out. If we are bold enough, then this is the time for us to call it out.
Right. I'm with you.
Right? We have to call it out because it doesn't make sense anymore. Probably it makes sense maybe 5 years, 10 years ago.
Hit control delete on chapter 11.
Well, yeah, and I didn't put this in here, but one new strategy could be I mean, do we say it?
Eliminate growth management.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that
For longer.
fairly extensively when we were talking about what to do with, inclusive zoning,
Yeah.
inclusionary zoning, sorry.
Yep, fold the design criteria into incentivized design standards like the Old Tap Corners 5 and 9 and the primarily the residential zoning district. We don't really get anything out of the growth management score from ag rural projects.
Yeah. Yeah, so like a lot of this chapter really deals with the growth management system and, you know, and I think, yeah, definitely, bears.
I mean,
talking
people
about
are worried about
useful-
sprawl and people are worried about traffic.
Yeah.
Like, I think we need to acknowledge the things people are concerned about. That is really important, but I do think it's important for us to also communicate that that is decoupled from like this idea of the tool being what will fix that is not actually real. And so how do we decouple the concerns and acknowledge the concerns and be thoughtful about the concerns and be clear that this thing over here that you were told was gonna fix this, didn't fix it, has made other problems, and if we wanna actually address traffic or whatever, that's gonna take other interventions that are not growth management.
Right, and
Right.
that disparity that's growing between median income and median household value. Let's be really careful about what's causing that. I mean, what's really causing the spread to occur? I don't think it's just, well, let's just raise the housing prices. That's certainly part of it. But there are also issues associated with job types and companies laying people off. And I mean, there's all kinds of factors that play in. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, you know, it's something we may not have any control at all over just because of the general economy.
Yeah, but I would like to look at the other way around, though, right? Like the one that we recently approved, the residential project. If we were to ask the developer to say, if you don't have this growth limitation, well, your project cost and home pricing will be different than what you project today. Right? Instead of having 18 homes a year to unlimited, well, you have a different business model.
Would you, and
If
would it
they-
be cheaper? Yeah.
If they come back and say, oh yeah, it will be 50K less, that's the answer, right?
It's an answer, but what does it do to quality of life? See, I think that's one of the concerns.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, and then just, you know, kind of talking about the housing trust fund and the stuff that the town could do to continue to encourage and support, affordable homes. But, yeah, and then there's stuff about, education and childcare that, we kind of have more questions than answers at this point. And there's, climate hazard mitigation. So I just stuck these two graphs in here about, showing the relationship between school enrollment and, growth of, homes or dwelling units. And it's kind of interesting because the school enrollment is the line, so it does sort of go up in tandem with the growth of housing until about 2002. And then enrollment peaks and it goes down while housing, the growth of housing continues to kind of increase at a steady rate and then school enrollment declines. So, I mean, to me, that just says that the relationship is complex and there's lots of factors that go into the school enrollment numbers besides just.
The main two are birth control and female education.
Yeah. Yep.
No joke. Those are the main two.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with housing.
And the age of population,
And the
where
age
we
of
have,
population.
we don't have many young families living here and moving in. It's the people who are here are older in age who aren't having kids.
But this also tells us to school is not a limitation for growth, right?
It would appear that way,
Yeah.
yeah. And just, you know, so the schools, district's job is to plan for the future, right? And, you know, one of its jobs, and so, you know, yeah, Williston may add another school, in 30 years or so, or whenever, but that's okay, as long as they plan, you know, if they're planning for that.
Right, like right now, our role is, the way the town plan is written is like limit growth to not increase the schools, when really it should be give the school district the best data and projections you can, so the schools can make informed decisions about
Well, and that was
their,
also a
their
change
services.
too, that happened,
So
right?
they
Like
don't drive
the-
us, we tell you and drive you.
Totally, and but that, I mean, also with the regional school district now, with the CVU school district. That changed in between last town plan and this
Right,
time, right?
right.
So
Yeah,
I think that is also a very
Mhm.
important distinction for us, you're right. But they were also operating in this, like, we control
Mhm.
a lot more than we do now.
mhm.
And then, I know that Jill was mentioned like. Wanting to kind of call out information about, the schools, like, you know, what kind of programs do they have, what kind of other educational programs are there in the town that can complement the schools, like outdoor education, like, you know, just different ways of, you know, educating, kids and,
Introduction to trades and things like that.
yeah.
Mhm.
Also, I don't know, like that whole conversation we just had about that right of way, and that's right by the school, like what can we do with land use that, like. If there is gonna be an indigenous archaeological park next to the school, like that's awesome, like what are we doing to cite?
Mhm.
Not just the community center or the library, but like. Other nice, like the, under the, land that Jay was talking about, community-based farming or community garden, like what can we put near schools
Mhm.
that is, positive and accessible to them to use for
That's a great idea.
cool, nice
Outdoor
things.
classrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Anyway, so. I don't know, 5 minutes to go.
No,
I
welcome.
tried to move some, not effective chair. All right, so I think maybe, I mean, all the teams have to do this separately, but I think we're all. I would like to wait for the report, and that's gonna really help me be able to be more
Mhm.
useful to you. Specifically, and that, and generation, but then I think we should try to do those. When we're not having a planning commission meeting, having the task force. Even if it's like half an hour, to make sure that you guys are keeping us honest. More.
Yeah, for sure.
I think something that might also be helpful is like, we need to have this town plan done. At some, but like, what are our milestones, what milestones we have before then? I know we talked about it briefly, but I think maybe next time, if we talk about like, by this date, we should have X, by this date, we should have Y. Then we can feel a little more on track.
Turn the heat up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I can use some deadlines.
Yeah,
Make us more comfortable.
Yeah,
right,
Good.
especially like with. If there's any data we wanna get from other organizations or entities, like if we want school district stuff, we should probably talk to them before the school year ends. Or even like be strategic about it, like. When they have work days after all the kids leave, like, is that our time to target getting information from them? I don't
That's a
know.
good idea.
Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, now I'm seeing Greg Marina, was it? Yeah, Greg,
Yeah.
at, Safe Routes to School meeting, so I could just like grab, you know, just like grab them and ask
Mhm.
how we can get that information.
Cool. Alrighty, April 2nd, we'll have the report.
Thank you guys very.
Yes,
Yes, sorry, motion to adjourn.
Opposed?
Thanks, everybody.
Melinda, are you blue?
Yes.
Blue team gets a gold star for organization.
Yeah, that was solid.
Yeah.
Oh my.